with the Canberra. Clay I discovered when I was 17, and I didn't ever think I was any good at anything. Fell in love with art because I didn't enjoy school much at all, but when I went to art school it was just, oh, this is the life. Not only was it great fun, but just trying different techniques and different ideas. It was just total freedom, and there were some good friends there when I first went there. And clay was the thing I seemed to connect with, especially throwing. I love throwing. So even though I think my work's contemporary based arts practice, I still love the really traditional stuff from throwing, and went and studied in Japan and learning about the way they connect with the clay. And I don't think we can ever really get what they're experiencing, but it's good to try to connect and even copy what they do in a sense, but in a much more experimental, flamboyant way. But that's the great thing about it, you just keep experimenting, and there's not enough time or energy to completely explore all the different ideas you get, and everybody who's experienced making art would feel that as well. Great fun and tiring, but nothing better. Some of the churches and cathedrals and places I've seen of great beauty are also symbols of great wasted wealth. It's just a feeling I get, especially in Europe. I went to see these magnificent cathedrals, all the golds and the silvers and the blues, and the adoration of all the symbolism within the church, that nobody went to church anymore. It was just a tourist attraction. So I wondered what the next step would be. Would that be being overtaken like Angkor Wat in Cambodia, or Machu Picchu in Peru, or some of the Japanese temples I've seen? Magnificent. And a lot of inspiration comes from my time in Japan, so not only with clay but the concept behind the work, mixing nature and civilization. Doesn't always go well, but they seem to have a great way of being able to do it. The Raku firings we've been doing are based on a Japanese technique that was dating right back to 1400s, 1500s, and it's a technique that they use to make the work, fire the work, and then use the work all in the one day for the tea ceremony. They fire them up to 1,000 degrees, take them out of the kiln and then into some combustible material which gives them a very earthy, very carbon trapped type of surface, and then they would actually use them in the tea ceremony. So we've taken that, I mean when I say we, the Western world have taken that process on. It's very dramatic to see pots coming out at 1,100 degrees or 1,000 degrees, red hot, and all the spluttering with the water and the flames, and people love it. But it's also a good way to do something quick, like making the sculptures, that I'm making. If I'm missing one piece like I was yesterday, quickly firing the piece up and taking it out and being able to use it straight away is a good technique. I grew up here on this very spot, and so did generations of the family. And the old farmhouse is still here, and it was a dairy farm, but that's hard work. So to see it as a art studio and with kilns, and it's only when you look around, stop and really think, you think, gee, we've done a lot here to get it to where it is, and it's so much fun, and so many people get to enjoy the firings and the Raku days and the studio workshops, and people, it's a beautiful spot really. And I was away for 20 years in Queensland. That was beautiful too up there, and I miss that place. But it was all really good to get back here and say, right, I've got another whole chapter of my life now. I've finished teaching, but I didn't really, because I'm still teaching here. But to say, well, I'm going to focus on my work and build this kiln. Cost a lot of money, a lot of effort, and some good friends helped me build it. So it's exciting to walk out and see it again and say, well, it's going to be a long winter here, but the great thing about it is that I'll be able to fire the wood kiln. In 1985 I went to Japan. I was teaching at Deakin Uni, and they had a 3-month break in the middle of the year. And I was teaching ceramics, and I could never really work out what the Japanese philosophy on ceramics was. It seemed to be so simple and so ordinary, but they were seen as national treasures and their national form of expression. So going there was terrific. My cousin was living there, and he had a house in Kyoto, and he said come and stay, and I did. And then I got to meet a pottery family in Tamba, Tachikui in Tamba, which is one of the 6 ancient kiln sites. And my cousin's friend asked the family if I could stay there, and they went into shock and then had a big family meeting, and then they turned around and said, yes, you can stay for a few days or a week or something. And I stayed there in an inn, but after a few days I could tell they didn't really want me there. They were very closed and very, very traditional. They didn't want a funny old foreigner hanging around. But so I said to them, I'm going to have to leave. But I'd sort of hit up a bit of a friendship with the son, who's my age, and he had to talk to his family, and they said, well, you can stay with us in the house until we do the wood firing, and then you can take off. So it was a very wet, rainy season that year. So it went on and on and on my stay, because they couldn't stack the kiln because the pots weren't dry enough to. So I stayed there for quite a while actually. And it was hard work. It was 6 days a week, no pay. But I'm glad I stuck it out. And they didn't want me there. I could tell they didn't want me there, and I didn't really want to be there either. But it's one of those times where I just said, no, I'll hang in there. I won't give up. And now, every time I go back to Japan, I go and stay with them. They're great friends. They treat me like family. Unfortunately, the old master died, but it wasn't before he came to Australia with his wife and son, and they built a wood kiln in Pruis, just outside of Noosa, on council land. And we had great success with that kiln, and a lot of people fired it, and it was great fun. And we were at the old butter factory there, so it was an art school. But then the council decided they wanted to reclaim the land and put a library there, so we had to pull the kiln down, and I felt terrible about that, because I knew the Ichino family had put their heart and soul into this kiln, and that it was just their dream come true. They'd never been overseas, and the old master had always wanted to experiment with 2 kilns. He was a kiln builder, which is fairly rare in Japan, because you can't just, like we do here, nominate yourself as a kiln builder or an artist or whatever. So he he put all this effort into building that kiln, and then to see it knocked down was heartbreaking. So I got a lot of the bricks and brought them back here and told them that I would rebuild the kiln here. I said, would you like to come out and fire it and do a workshop? And they said no. They didn't want to know about it. But they were thrilled that I was going to rebuild the kiln.
I've been involved with every firing that Barry's done in his wood-fired kiln. I'm not sure how many firings he's done now, but it'd have to be at least 5, I would say. It's a big process, it's a long process, there's a lot of work involved in it. It goes through an enormous amount of wood, which all has to be collected and then cut into lengths. It has to be fed into the kiln once the kiln is lit, about every 10 to 15 minutes, and that firing usually goes for a couple of days, day and night. So you need a lot of people on board to get behind it and do shifts. It's pretty amazing. Once you go into the first 24 hours and the kiln really starts to roar, and you can hear it roaring when the wood's being fed into it. You have flames leaping 6 foot high up above the top of the chimney. It's pretty amazing. Very, very hot when you're putting the wood into the front there. And you've got to work quickly so that you don't, when you open the door to feed the wood in, you don't let too much of the heat out.
The wood kiln that it's going now, it's about 1,000 degrees, and that's sort of something like 12 hours it's been running now. It'll go all day today, tonight and tomorrow. Probably switch it off about 10 o'clock tomorrow night, so it'll be very, very hot then. The front will be around 1,350 degrees, which is really, really high temperature. It's white hot, you can hardly even see in the kiln. You want it a bit straight like that?
Yeah.
But that shape's easy to adjust.
Adjust. So you want me to put that in the sun for a while?
Yes,
And
I do.
Smooth a little.
Start another one. So you just press that top. Yeah. And this wobble that's there, just looks like that.
He's so incredibly down to earth. He has so much knowledge and passion. I guess I'm just speaking from ceramics because that's the area that I'm doing. That I feel very privileged to be in his space.
In 2007 I met Barry when he was filling in for Warrnambool, and our relationship has built over the years, and now I'm doing mentorship with Barry Tate at the Factory Arts, and yeah, he's a nice bloke and he gets the best out of me and he gets the best out of his students.
The story that Barry told me about when he was a kid, when he was about 7 or 8, and the nuns picked him out to be the priest. And I think they saw the same characteristics as lots of us see about Barry, where he cares for the people around him, and that comes first, and he's creative.
He's deeply concerned about the problems of the world, how we are, and also how we could be. And this is kind of galvanised through a kind of unique process. So something really special when you're an art gallery director, or a curator, or a writer. You spend your entire life looking at artwork. And unfortunately, it's hard to say, 99.9% of what you see is pretty good. Or it's not great. It doesn't have that thing about it that hits you in the stomach, kind of takes the air out of you. And with Barry, You always get that. It takes me a long time to figure out what it is about it. I think that if we consider, say, film to be the great art form of the 20th century, Andy Tarowski, the great Russian film director, called sculpting in time. I just love that idea of light flickering across over your head. We invariably don't go to the cinema on our own, we go to somebody else. And the first thing you say when you come out of the cinema is, what did you think? Because we don't mean to say what you think. We actually mean to say, what did you feel? Did you like it or dislike it? They're emotional reactions. That's why people love talking about movies in the hours, the days, and the weeks afterwards. They're trying to reconcile to themselves, amongst others, what that feeling meant to them. And with Barry, you get that straight away. You are hit with that solar plexus. And then you have to remember it. It just works on your head. And I think that's the power of great art. And that's the power of Barry Tate's art.
Shore one day, saw the white sails in the sun. Wasn't long before you felt that sting. White man, white law, white gun. Don't tell me that it's justified, 'cause somewhere